2024 meeting of the Norfolk City Council. I will call the meeting to order and call your attention to the Open Meetings Act posted here in the City Council chambers. If you'd now please join me in rising for a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Granquist.
Here.
Arns.
Here.
Webb.
Here.
McCarthy.
Here.
Murin.
Here.
Snorton. Clausen.
Here.
Hildebrand.
Here.
Okay, with that, I would look for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
Motion and second. If no discussion, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Motion carries.
Would then look for a motion to approve the full agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the full agenda.
Second.
Motion second. If no discussion, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Motion carries.
Okay, that takes us to item number 19 on the council agenda under public hearings and related action. We'll move right into it. Item 19, I will open this public hearing at the request of RDK Holding to consider a zoning change from I-1 Light Industrial District to C3 Service Commercial District on property addressed as 1202 South 13th Street. And for some background on this and to kick off the hearing, we'll hear from Val Grimes, our city planner.
Thank you. So 19 and 20 are the zone change, and if Brianna will bring up the map, I can show you where it is. It's in the northwest corner of 13th and Omaha. So there is C3 adjacent to it, and we are trying to get our corridor into more of commercial and out of industrial. We still have quite a bit of industrial, but the people are asking for C3 because they want to do 2 restaurants there, and so it would be a conditional use permit in an I-1, and it's outright permitted in C3, if there are any questions.
Thank you, Val. Any questions? This is a public hearing, so anyone wishing to comment can do so now. Okay. Seeing and hearing no one, I will move to hear a Planning Commission report, please.
The Norfolk Planning Commission held a public hearing on May 21st, 2024 to consider a zoning change from I-1 Light Industrial District to C3 Service Commercial District on property addressed as 1202 South 13th Street. The Planning Commission recommends approval of the request with a 6-0 vote.
Okay, thank you. With that, I will close the hearing and move to item 20. I would entertain a motion to consider ordinance number 5884 approving a zoning change from I-1 to C3 on property addressed as 1202 South 13th Street.
I'll offer for consideration ordinance number 5884 approving a zoning change from I-1 to C3.
Second.
Motion and second. So Val, just to make it clear, part of this parcel is I-1, the other part is C3. This ordinance would make the entire parcel C3, correct?
Actually, all of it is I-1 currently.
All of it's I-1, okay.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Okay. And I think we've all seen publicly through Planning Commission, there was discussion on what the plans are for development here. It's Freddy's Restaurant, a 7 Brew coffee
Yes.
establishment, is that right?
And if you pass this on all 3, there will be a plat following this on that same property, and I can bring the plat along with the landscape and building plan.
Okay, okay, very good. Any discussion, council, on this or questions about the zoning change itself? Okay. Hearing none, short title, please.
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Madison County, Nebraska, amending the zoning district map of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska providing when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and providing for the publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
Okay, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance number 5884 carries on first reading.
I'll make a motion that we suspend the rules and pass on second and third.
Second.
Motion second to suspend the rules and approve on second and third readings. If no further discussion, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance number 5884 carries on second and third.
Okay, item 21, we'll look for a motion to consider resolution 2024-25 approving the final plat of RDK addition.
I'll offer for consideration Resolution 2024-25 approving the final plat of RDK addition.
Second.
Motion second. Okay, Val, here we can talk a little bit more about what is planned for this parcel.
Yes, so this is the proposed final plat, splitting that one parcel that just got zone changed into two. So the larger one is proposed for a Freddy's Lot 2, and Lot 1 is for the 7 Brew. And you'll see that they did put like a cross easement for traffic flow and such in there so that the entrances will remain the same off of 13th and off of 275. So they're not changing the entrances, and that way there is traffic flow across there. And then I can show you the proposed building layout with the landscaping, because this is in the highway corridor overlay. So this is their proposed landscaping for that. And you can see better why the easements are in place flowing through the two property off of the plat.
Thank you, Val. So part of the discussion at Planning Commission was a waiver request for one of those requirements regarding setbacks, correct? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so the highway corridor requires a 10-foot landscape along the frontages. And so what they requested, they couldn't quite get the 10 feet along 275 to keep the traffic flow in a safe distance, to keep cars going both ways and fit the parking and everything in there. And so they requested a 10 feet down to a 7 feet, but they are getting all of the shrubbery and the trees in there, and then they are taking that square footage that they would be short from the 10 to the 7 and adding it to the depth along 13th Street.
Okay. Thank you, Val. Seems like a reasonable compromise. Any questions, council? Or comment or input from public? Okay. Hearing none, I think we can move to a vote. We're excited about another investment there along one of our most heavily trafficked corridors, and the cooperation helping beautify that space as well. If no further discussion, short title, please. I'm sorry, we're just considering the resolution. So, if no further discussion, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, resolution 2024-25 is adopted.
All right, item 22, I will open this public hearing to comply with the provisions of Nebraska Revised Statutes 18-1755 to acquire property located at 610 West Norfolk Avenue. And for some backgrounds on this and to introduce the developers, Al, do you want to open, please?
Sure, I can do that. I'll bring the map up showing that corner. So this is the city's green space that you see here with the trail going through it, and then the Old Salvation Army, which is the applicant's piece of property. And they are wishing to swap some of the green space in the center and put their structure there, and then replace that green space with a piece of property up here and down here, and then off to the corner in the northeast corner. So up along here. And the plat is part of this also, so I don't know if that would be easier for people to look at as to what the swap pieces are.
If that would be helpful, yeah.
Okay.
In the meantime, while Val's bringing it up, you gentlemen go ahead and introduce yourself.
Rob Baronk with Midwest Health Partners.
Seth Lange with Olson.
Okay, the floor is yours. Tell us
right.
about your project.
So this has been kind of a long time coming. With this property that was out there, it looked like a good opportunity. Dr. Verbicki wanted to bring medicine into downtown Norfolk. One of the things that occurred when we purchased the property was that with Salvation Army had purchased a property, the old post office, and they needed time to get in to it, get it renovated so that they could get their worship center and all their other items in there. So part of our purchase contract, if you see the line that's going down the center of there, or kind of off to the right a little bit more, Val, yeah, right there, that is leaving their parking that they required from the purchase contract for them to be able to continue their business, and then us not to impede into the bank, which is in that front corner right there, and allow us to get this building going right away. And by setting back in and then adding, setting back into this space, it allows us to get the building going. And then when it's finished, we actually be able to handle all the parking that would come into our facility. We're looking at about 150 patients, somewhere in that, on a daily basis, and we can cover all of our parking assets inside of this and not put a burden on any city parking on that end of town. One of the things that Dr. Verbicki did mention in this development is that as we move forward, it was being a good neighbor, and two things came out of that. That really kind of got us into this where we could sit back in and look like we were, and actually be part of downtown Norfolk and not look like it was just an anomaly sitting out there, but also give us the advantage to offer like after hours parking like in our lot when we're done. And the other thing that we noticed is that you had a really good vision on this parkway on the side on 7th Street, but I noticed that Brosh had stopped at 5th as far as the rehabbing it, and you know, we thought that we could actually extend that vision, continue what you guys were looking at, and bring it down around the corner and actually create a parkway that goes all the way around from where our property line ends and all the way back up to 4th Street. And one of the aspects of this is that with this 44-inch sidewalk that's right there, it would give an opportunity to put like an 8-foot walk in all the way along Brosh, which if you're using Brosh and Madison Avenue as like your throughways for like your traffic or pedestrian traffic, has a better access to Norfolk Avenue. And it seems that that's kind of the development of downtown, is to be a more pedestrian environment. It would give the ability for people to actually move through this space and actually have a really nice space and continue on vision of what you guys created. One of our designs that we don't have on there, that space is set out at it's about 150 feet, right? And it gives us an opportunity to set this building in and go multi-floor up and not eat as much of the surrounding ground around us. It gives us an advantage to service downtown Norfolk. We have future development planned also for the existing Salvation Army building. And with us being able to develop half and then be able to go into this other one, we don't put any burden on downtown Norfolk as far as parking. And I think what we do is we actually augment the shortfall that's down there right now. We're bringing medicine downtown, and I think the idea is that the staff, everybody out there is really excited to be down there, and we're gonna go one way or the other. But 150 people a day is going to, or patients a day is going to bring some commerce to downtown Norfolk as well. I think what you see on this plat, and Seth, you can fill this in, but so if we are able to extend the green space on both sides, it's making bigger, like a bigger green space, actually bigger parks on both sides, and then into the corner on the northeast side.
Thank you, Rob. Any questions on this part? So we're hearing this in a couple different pieces. The piece in front of us now is the acquisition of this property, and that's roughly how many square feet, Rob, are we talking about?
And about 61. And then what we would be giving back, and is, I think it was around 62. Yeah.
6,200, so
Yeah.
not 62,000.
Yeah, 6,100.
So 6,100 is being required, 6,200 would be
About
proposed
6240
for
or something like that.
this
Yeah.
swap.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. It's one of the questions I had on this in other discussions is if not encroaching on this space, it seemed like the primary motivation to do this is to not eat into available parking right now. What does it look like if that was left alone? Because I know you guys considered very many options here. What if that space wasn't touched? What's the reality in terms of parking needs and the challenge created there if you don't touch the green space?
So the challenge is that we've kind of played with the building size. So we were at about 10,200, I think, for what our original footprint was. And we're shrinking it down to, it's at around a 7,400 square foot. And that was one of the reasons why we went up as well. But if we're not able to set back in, we lose the ability to really do our construction and without waiting until we're completely out of Salvation Army without being moving. But the advantage is that as we set back in, it actually isn't, not only did it be able to move the green space around, but it actually afforded us somewhere in the 20 to, I don't know what it was, 20 to 25 parking spots, I think is what it added to the area, which we think that would be an asset. Without it, we don't have that. We don't have that parking to offer. I mean, it'll still end up going up. But I think if we're looking at parking assets on that end of Norfolk, I mean, right now, we currently have, prior to the iHub falling down, we get about, and like on the average, it's about 15 cars that'll come in for parking in the lunchtime. And there's other people that just come in and they park along there. But now you had 23 parking spots on Norfolk Avenue in between 7th Street and 8th Street. And that included the ADAs. And those are full every day. And so was the parking lot that was alongside that east wall of the iHub, where iHub's going to go. Now that's all closed off. We lost all that parking. And I think I think it puts us somewhere around 11 spaces that are on the north side. And people and citizens of Norfolk have to have a place to park to be able to go enjoy the same services that they have been, during their lunch and dinner hours. And with us being able to get this in the ground and being able to get going, we actually have a great opportunity to offer after-hours parking. Is not as much maybe, won't be during the construction side of this, but as we get into a completion on the project, it opens up an area that people are used to. I don't know how we untrain the citizens of Norfolk to not park there. I mean, it's on a private lot for a long time. And we don't want to go down there and cause a disruption. We want to be able to be the best neighbor that we can. I don't know if that answers your question, but.
The proposed green space that you're adding in, so you're swapping, the idea is to swap equally, actually a little bit more.
Right.
So on the south side, that extension, that strip there, yeah, is that 15 feet wide?
It
Is that
is.
right? Okay. And that would extend to Norfolk Avenue?
It would.
Okay.
It doesn't change any on the north and south boundary, it just pushes more to the east, right? And then also part of this is that we were taking care of all of the reconstruction of that property as it's added. And as far as the landscaping, it was well done, and I think we have the ability to keep it in that same vein.
Yeah, in that spirit, retain as much, because I know that the city did put in some significant investment to establish that green space there. There will be some trees, in fact, there's fairly mature trees involved in this area, existing in this area.
There are a few. Now, I think we can move all but two. And one of the mature trees that we can't move, it's kind of had some damage or stuff done to it, but we can actually replace those. I mean, replace the trees. We can't put it back into the same maturity, obviously, because of the trunk size is what's keeping them from being moved.
Council, any questions?
So just a comment, looking at this particular map, so you will replace what you take out though, right?
Yes.
Sidewalk-wise,
Yes,
tree-wise?
yes. We would, so everything would be redone as far as like, we reshape the sidewalk around, it isn't like, so there's berming that's there. And so the boundary, like, Val, could you show the plat? That boundary that you see, it's actually faceted in the corners, like where you see those 4 dots. And that's actually a retaining wall. So it actually demarks the space completely. So there's no confusion on if it's a city park or if it's our space, because it actually be on this side of the wall, there's going to be concrete going around it, so that we have to be able to pass around the building a little bit as well, for maintenance.
How far will that wall be from the building, the corner of the building?
It's gonna be a ways, because you imagine that, did he send you a picture of the building? By chance, from staff?
The only thing I have is the one that he sent me from.
I had. If I could get this forward.
Should it be forwarded to her, or you can try to plug this in?
Okay. Let's go with this.
I have a question for you,
Sure.
Seth, while Rob's looking for that. Do we have, I assume you guys have looked at this, any issues at all with utility easements along there?
Excuse me.
Does
sorry.
anything have to be moved, and if so, that would be your expense?
Yeah, usually, any of these developments, it's at the developer's expense to move, any utilities that would be required. Right now, if you look at it, there is I think there's an NPPD line, that power line kind of runs kind of catty corner on that northwest corner down to where the existing Salvation Army is. That one may need to be moved. I think there might be a possible gas line that we may have to reroute. And that's about it from what my discussions have been with franchise utilities.
This is kind of a junior rendering of what the building's like. We were trying to garner as much of downtown in it as far as like ephes or brick or steel, and it's, you know, I think it complements a lot of the building that's going around there, you know, like you can figure Black Cow, the Chamber, I mean, when it's not a departure. And in that, I think to answer the question about with that wall going around there, so like if this is sitting, there, we actually have our maintenance space around it, I mean, to be able to get utility around there for garbage or trash or that way. And yeah, I mean, it's pretty definitive. And we put in the retaining wall, and we finish off the landscaping, we bring it out to the edge, we recurb, and it's all set.
In this rendering that you have up here, which way is that awning facing?
Oh, that's actually facing to the east. So that you
So
would
7th
drive-
Street gets the backside of the building?
Pardon? 7th Street would be looking at this is just, like I said, a junior rendering. That middle picture that you see, that's the one, but there actually would be, from what we've seen for signage, we actually have the ability to put, I mean, it should look the same all the way around. There shouldn't be like a back side of the building. It should look welcoming on all ends. But until we can pull traffic in off of 7th Street, we'd take them off of Norfolk or Brosh.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that, it's just green space for the backside of a building.
Pardon? Go ahead.
You'd still have green space on that backside of the building.
I think it's about 42 feet.
Uh, 42 feet that remains from the backside of the building to curb?
No, from the retaining wall, to the curb,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah. Okay. You had mentioned mixed use and later phases. I know it's kind of beyond the bounds of what we're discussing here, but it helps give us a picture of what else could be developed on the property. Are you able or willing to talk about what that vision is at this point, or what that mixed use potentially looks like on other parts of the property?
We have a couple different ideas, but it just depends on how we fill out in the building. One of them for sure is to adding some retail on the east side, so like you'd be able to have retail on the ground floor. Similar, I think, where I've seen it the most is like down in the Haymarket in Lincoln, where you look at all the commercial buildings and stuff that are going up. They actually want, like, if you're gonna build a building, that they want you to have available retail space on the ground floor, and then your business or your corporate or commercials can all be up above it. And that's kind of the idea. I think there's an opportunity for, to be able to do retail. One of the visions that we were looking at was workforce housing above, doing multi-floor there. We have another part of this towards the Brosh side that has a possibility of connecting us in a way of like in a research center, which is kind of crazy because of IHOB coming in and what they plan on do, but this would be lending itself more to medical research. So we're excited about the opportunity on the land, but neither one of those ideas can actually take place until we can take away that building, the existing building for Salvation Army.
Any
Was-
kind of timeline projected on that? Sorry.
On it?
On Salvation Army building
On it
and the
leaving?
chance for the move, yeah.
We need to turn some.
You, she knew?
Yeah, we need to turn some revenue. We heard, I talked to Major and he had said that they thought they were gonna have an early entry into the post office and then, we don't know. I mean, things kind of slowed. I know that when they first started, the way all the three-phase that had went in there, he said they had to take everything out from the curb and go back in and they reconstructed all of it. So where we are contractually with them is they have until 12/31 of this year to be in that building.
Okay, thank you.
And I think the advantage for us too is as we get into winter, if they move out, we have the ability to store some of our casework or stuff like that as we're putting the building up. So we actually have a place to shelter the goods and continue our construction and not have it be impeded by weather. And then when that's done, we can move it.
Just curious, as Corey asked, the awning faces east.
Yeah, and quite honestly, we don't even know if that's in fact gonna, I mean, if it would, it's a conceptual drawing
Yeah,
of
yeah,
what
sure.
it could be. But, and what it is just like you'd have like on any of the buildings where you can drive up, and drop off, because we have, understandably, we got people from all ages that are coming to get medical services.
Right, so if you face south, it'd be more difficult for drop-off.
It would be.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense, I guess. Good question, Corey. I was kind of wondering why it was that direction.
Yeah, no, I think it is a good question. It's seeing how everything is fit in this and all the different phases, and this really seemed to plug in the vast.
I got a couple questions.
Sure.
And I don't know if this is up for you or this is for somebody else, but, who set the land evaluations of what each parcel is valued at? Who set that? Who set those numbers?
Val or Danny, can you address that in terms of, that was part of the process of discussion here, right? Finding a value of what this put property was in terms of the discussion about a possible swap.
That was not within my purview as far as this project is concerned, so I would have to defer to somebody else.
And the concept being a one-to-one swap, perhaps that was not part of the discussion.
So they're made up values at this moment then?
Which ones are you referencing?
I mean, any of them, where they come from as far as, outlying lot 2, how do we come up with that, what that value was? That railroad property, that 7/10 of an acre? Where does that value come into? How do we put the value on the green space that we're losing versus the green space that we're gaining? And I know I heard we get an extra 100 square feet. I guess I'm just trying to compare dollars to dollars of what things are valued at.
And in terms of I can't speak to the value, but how we have the agreement structured, which is going to come on later, it is in terms of the square feet. So trying to keep it an equal swap in terms of the square footage here. So it contemplates the city exchanging 6,165 square feet in exchange for receiving 6,254 square feet. So, but in terms of value, I can't speak to that. I'm just telling you based on what the agreement that we'll look at eventually
So the
says.
values are really not relevant, it's the square foot that we should be looking at.
As far as how this agreement is drafted, yes, I do not believe that there was any conversations in terms of, value on a square foot basis.
Okay.
You're not
you're not way off there, Corey, to assume that a whole parcel carries the same value as fragmented parcels around a lot is, I would say there's definitely a difference in value there, in my opinion. So,
Another question I had in terms of whether it's what's before us or what's coming next. We've had the discussion about whatever's taken here, whether it's sidewalk space or trees will be replaced somewhere else. How is that laid out? So everybody knows, how is that laid out in the agreement here? Are there specific parameters pointed to saying there's 6 semi-mature trees and what can't be planted will be planted otherwise somewhere else? Are we into that level of detail on any of, whether it's this document or any of the upcoming documents that we'll consider?
So I guess in terms of what the agreement says, so right now we're having the public hearing to comply with the requirements of state law, and this would lead to the ordinance, and that's just for the conveyance. So the first step was gonna be the conveyance, and if that passes on all 3 readings, then at that time we would move on to the land swap agreement, just to make it clear, but for purposes of addressing your question, Mayor, the agreement that was drafted by my office does not go into any depth of detail in terms of the type of landscaping, to the degree that you're asking. It really just contemplates that any landscaping plan that is accomplished by Midwest has to be pre-approved by the city of Norfolk. But in terms of getting into any kind of, line items or any detail, it does not contemplate that. So that would need to come back before the council as a revised agreement if we were going to get into more detail than the pre-approval that's contemplated now.
And that's simply to state, not that we don't trust you or take your word for it. I'm just wondering if there's a device here in which there's a guarantee that every effort will be made to transplant those affected trees and put back into
Absolutely,
place what was taken out. Yeah.
I think that's a good question. And I think that part of what Danny said kind of addresses that in the fact that the landscaping design, as it comes back, you guys you say, now we don't like that or whatever. But I mean, if we're not falling away from the original vision of what that space was, and we can continue that on, I don't
That would come back in the form of a final plat for
Yes,
the
it would.
redevelopment, right? Okay.
so how many of the trees do you think you could transplant? I think, was there 6 trees?
I think most, from what I got, a guy who's got this company that has a big spade, I think he can move, what did he tell me? He's moved up to like 9 inches or so, in there. He's actually moved bigger, but it's a survivability thing.
Yeah.
Right, because of, once they mature to a certain thing, he goes, it's like you take this tree and it's growing this way down underneath. It looks like the root system looks very similar to what's up above.
Yeah.
And so when they take it, it's just like if they can maintain enough of the tap and get it to sit. So a lot of them work because they have a lot of broad rooting, but they don't guarantee on the great big trees. But we can put some pretty decent mature trees back in, but just not like maybe one that's so fat, where the trunk is too wide.
One of the building's big, it's a nice building. One of my fears is this space is for public use. And when you put this big of a structure in the middle of public property, it probably doesn't feel like public property anymore. I feel like I'm on
I don't think that's a bad assessment either. I think when you look at it, I think we went to great pains on this really and I think the design was, and being able to extend, if we had that, Val, could you put the plat back up by chance? So one of the ideas is that if it can, you lose a little bit of the depth perception on this based on where when we add the additional space onto each end, right? And it looks like it's really encroaching more in. But if it was taken away, you have that long, it's a long, narrow piece, and we actually have the ability to expand the ends. And with I don't know, 40 foot's a pretty big space still. I mean, from curb to wall.
That's on the west side,
Yeah, so like, right where you see the where it says 7th Street,
Yeah.
76, right, and you go there, that space in between that east line and then where the back end or where the retaining wall would go,
That's 40.
it's just right in that 40, 41 foot. And when we shrink that, I mean, that's a big lot, and when you shrink it down like this to fit it on this lot, it looks like, I mean, that space looks fairly narrow. If you look at, from the curb to the original line, like out from curb to curb, we're going east to west, it's right at 75 feet. And not all of that's in green space, because it goes into parking lot.
I assume it's not possible with your development just to keep parcels whole. So you take a whole parcel, we get a whole parcel.
And, yeah, and I don't know, Justin, I don't know what, give me an idea what.
So I don't know, what's the square footage of that you wanted of that park right there? What is that, 6,100 you said?
Yeah.
So do you have do we have 6,100 somewhere else that we can have? Can we replace that green space?
I don't know that we can take that piece and just stick it in the middle of our development. I don't think that.
No, to the north or to the south or wherever you think that you guys.
So right now, just to give you an idea, like what's on Brosh, there's a 15-foot right-of-way off there, because I think we're at 66 feet, so we got 33 off center that comes in. So from the curb, there's 15 foot. So that's all gonna go back as green when that comes back in. The sidewalk is gonna go to 8 foot. And then, so what you don't see on this is that you don't see that right away, or even in, from curb to the 15 foot inside there. So you get a natural continuation of this green space coming around onto Brosh, and it doesn't, and I think the value is that it doesn't actually, it doesn't demean the idea of what that park, it's like a continuation of the park. You can kind of see it in some of the metro areas, how they've done the same thing, and they've made connections for them, and given like these areas were just kind of flow through. You have a walk or pass through points, and then that's kind of what we end up with on that other end. I don't know where we could say that we would just, I don't know how to lay out, say, a 61, and what would that look like? Would we take that exact size, flip it over onto the edge, and say, this is gonna be it right next to the railroad tracks? I think the last park, or the last little improvement that was made was right at 5th Street and Brosh. And they have a little corner that's there, and they'd net down that sidewalk that went by Centrum, coming west. They went from 10 foot down to 8 foot, then they put that corner in, and then it goes, yeah. So that little corner that's over there, yeah. And then, so the idea here would be, is to come across and actually just kind of continue everything straight down. See where the line is, the yellow line is right there?
Between you and custom.
Mm-hmm. That line out to the curb is 15 foot. And if you notice, if we were able to broaden that sidewalk to 8 foot, it's gonna kind of fit that whole narrative that was looking for on Brosh. And then consequently, coming around to the corner, one of the ideas for the design is to continue that 8 foot all the way around the corner and connect into the curved walk, and we can actually do that in that same space. And move traffic around the corner and not mess up with any of the ADA corner, but you'll be able to move a high volume of traffic there as well.
So on the east side of Salvation Army, heading south, you plan on putting in green space there above what you're showing for a swap?
Well, so when when the Salvation Army building comes, or when that finally comes out of there, that lot is going to be what we're looking at for development, to be bringing retail, kind of similar in the same fashion where you see it, but in a way that we could do some retail and possible, like workforce above.
Danny, if this was to be approved, do they have to start development before the land swap becomes official? Or if we approve this, do they get the land no matter what they do with their property?
So in terms of process, I mean, this first step is the ordinance, so this would have to pass on all 3 readings. We have to go through, there's 2 processes for conveyance and one for acquisition, and then we have the land swap and the plat. So there's a lot there. I think you're asking, that would kind of tie in with the agreement, which is a later step, right? This would have to pass on all 3 readings before we would even move on. But are you asking like if something was changed
Say
with
they
the
don't,
project?
say they don't develop it, say
Yeah.
they don't end up, which isn't
Yep.
far-fetched to think.
Okay, that's what I thought you were asking. So I appreciate the clarification. So I did add something within the agreement that contemplated this. That says in the event that the medical office project is not commenced, or if the project changes in any way that affects the understanding of the parties or the terms set forth in this agreement, then this agreement will be void. So it'll be automatically void if something changes that's not in conformity with what the council is just deciding.
Be Rob or Seth. So just looking at this photo, I see a bright green line and a yellow line. By adding that 15 feet on that northwest corner, are you going to have to redo that entrance?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, well, and Frank, we were gonna have to do that anyway. We're gonna have to, and I think the benefit is that it moves it further away from the corner, that it's better access for people coming in and off of Brosh.
And where would that just,
Sliding it to the east.
And you've got the same issue on the south side with Norfolk Avenue, correct? Because there's an access right there.
Yep. There is an access that's right there, but fortunately, there was a street light that was planted right in the middle of it, so it kind of took that option away.
While this picture is still up here, you guys have talked about extending and making an 8-foot sidewalk from 4th Street to 7th Street there along Brosh. Have we talked
Well,
to the
not
other?
from 4th Street to 7th, from our corner of
Excuse-
our corner of our property, yes.
Along Brosh there, are you, have you had any conversation with the other property owner there to the east?
Talk to Gary.
Yeah,
I haven't yet. But with sidewalks being narrowed and broadened, I mean, we can be 8 foot on ours all the way up there and narrow down to that space. My guess is that, I mean, Gary's not a hard guy to deal with. I think, at least I don't consider him to be.
yeah, I was just curious.
No, I think it's a good question.
Along 7th, so the walking path there, the trail, as we all can see, has some contour to it. It's curved, it's not just linear, right?
Right.
So would that be maintained, and if so, I mean, you said 40-some feet to work with. What guarantees do we have on how that's designed? Does that come into place at plat, in terms of how you plan to put that back and how it looks once it's?
No, I think what we can do is we can put some offerings up. I mean, as far as what it looks like when we're putting that together. I think the most beneficial thing for everybody would be is if we have to get into that anyway because of the way the sewer comes in, right, dead center of that property. There's only one curb drain, about right where it says, right where you see 140, what is that?
145 feet.
Yeah, right in there, that there's just one curb drain that's in that. We have to be able to connect on so we can sheet drain this lot, move our drainage system out to the lot and pull it away from that end. But we have, I mean, that's an expense we'd have to, and we'd have to build that back as well.
Yeah.
But I think we can render designs that once we put that retaining wall up, I think it's beneficial for us to be able to frame it right away so that it's not it's a disruption while we can continue to do our construction.
Mayor, I'd suggest, think through the agreement, we could tie some city approval to the building permit process where we approve the site plan.
Reapprove site plan, that includes the reconnection of that trail. Because what we're considering tonight, there's no contractual obligation here. I mean, we're just talking about conveyance, acquisition of property and a land swap, right? Looking for staff to help me out on this.
So I think the comments made by Danny and Steve tonight are accurate. And what staff tried to do in this is to try to keep it as flexible as possible, but yet have all the safeguards in for the city. So that before anything is finalized, they present that plan to us with landscaping, with tree, you know, if they're gonna put a tree here, a tree there. And my assumption was that that sidewalk and any changes that would be made as part of that, because that's all gonna have to work together as far as where they would put trees and any irrigation that needs to be moved, retaining walls, berms, all that is gonna have to be part of that plan, that site plan that they present. And having as much detail can work against, in my opinion, both of us, as much detail as we have without getting into this and let them do some of their work, move forward with some of their design work, and then present that landscaping plan to us. And I think, you know, just to add on to what Steve said, I mean, that building permit process is just another safeguard, another layer that we have that they're gonna have to do as well. So I think that we were comfortable as we put this together that this had as many safeguards as we could possibly put together, which is what we discussed well at subcommittee, which all that information has been presented to you here today.
To that end, and what's before us tonight, the land swap finalization, is it contingent on an authorized final plat for the property?
That detail, I'll maybe defer to Danny to see what, if one's contingent on another one. I don't know how to answer that question as far as how the items go.
So just in terms of things being contingent, if this doesn't pass, this ordinance doesn't pass on all three, then we would hold off. Everything else would likely be, you know, I would suggest that we move to table that. If we get through the ordinance, if it passes on all three, then we would get through the 16202, the acquisition of property, and then the land swap agreement, and then there's a resolution. So I think we have to get through this process first, but they all kind of fall back. You know, you have to have the legal processes in place for the 18-1755 and the 16202 acquisition and conveyance. You have both of those in place before you would do the land swap, because that kind of firms things up. And then I think we agree that it kind of all goes at the same time with the plat, correct, Val? We kind of, it all fits together. Is how it kind of works. We just need to get through this ordinance
Okay.
on all three.
So some of these discussions about level of detail and where things are at is better had during item 26, discussion of the final plat.
Yes, what we are talking about right now, so this is the public hearing. When we close this, we're gonna move into the ordinance. And that is just for the conveyance. That is just the piece that the city of Norfolk is conveying to Midwest Health Partners, contemplating the transaction that's going to be effectuated through the remainder of the agenda items that are before us tonight.
Okay. So theoretically, the conveyance acquisition goes forward, but if the final plat doesn't meet certain stated expressions up here, that could be held off until that, and it could be amended. The final plat could be amended to do so.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Okay, this is a public hearing. Any other questions for the developers while they're up here? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to comment on this matter?
Jim McKenzie. When I was looking at the map, the city does have underground fiber optic cable running through that green space. I don't know if anybody has located that to see if that conflicts. That would be a fairly significant cost, I think, to relocate that, so I just didn't know if anybody's looked at that.
My understanding is yes, we've done, there's been some utility locate activity out there. We've for both the power and the city fiber.
Okay,
And that's
very
been
good.
shared with the developer.
Okay. And then I just had a thought on that the corner piece that is swapped. It seems like if the property owner is going to maintain the green space all the way across the north, does it make any sense for the city to even own that corner of property? I mean, the city then has to maintain a little corner, and they're maintaining a corner, and the property owner is maintaining the rest of it. It seems like it's cheaper for the city if the property owner maintains ownership of that corner, because then we're not having to maintain a space in perpetuity. Just a thought. And then the last question I had would be, is this project going to request TIF? And if so, and TIF is denied, then how does that affect the execution of these agreements? Basically, you'd have to reverse the ordinance, the conveyance of the property, the land swap agreement, and the final plat if this comes back with TIF and TIF is denied. So I don't know if that's being contemplated on this.
With regard to the TIF question, we have not received, to my knowledge, TIF application for this project.
Okay, very good. That was my questions. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to comment? Okay, seeing and hearing no one else, we'll move to close the hearing and move to item 23. Would consider a motion of ordinance number 5887 authorizing the conveyance of property located near 610 West Norfolk Avenue.
I'll offer for consideration ordinance number 5887.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion, council?
I just want, however this goes, I just think it's important that the amount of effort and time that's went in that green space, the maturity of those trees, with respect to how the public uses that space, we need to make sure that we're protecting that and that we're keeping that. Maybe selling this to them is not a bad option, and to say, hey, you want to buy this from the city, maybe that's a better question, and then have a say on what they do with green space. But I don't know, I just feel like we need to have some consideration with what's going on here as far as what trees will be taken out. If we do want to continue maintaining the property, and not all of it, but some of it, and I don't know. So just some thoughts.
I think those are fair concerns, Councilman. I think they maybe warrant some discussion on how procedurally this works, because we do have a final plat on the agenda tonight that I guess we would only hear if this ordinance would pass on all three readings, correct? And so I guess some of those things in my mind, those detailed questions about requiring what's there be moved as much as possible to somewhere else, could be contemplated within that final plat discussion, whether we're ready to have it tonight or at a future time. Looking at the bigger picture here, we've got well-established, well-respected medical practitioner in the community wanting to modernize and relocate his facilities in downtown, bringing patients and people to downtown on a daily basis, on a piece of property that's ready and prime for redevelopment. So that is a strong consideration in itself. And I think we want to be as reasonable as possible in helping accommodate that. We're also talking about conveying some public space that was invested in not too long ago to help beautify downtown. So those are two good things. We just have to find a balance of how they can, I think, both be accommodated. So, and I think maybe the best vehicle we have to do that is the final plat that comes before us. Yeah.
Mayor, I do agree with you. There's a balancing act involved. I guess I wish from my standpoint, I wish I would have seen, we would have been swapping dollar value versus dollar value versus 61 and 6,200 square feet. There's a lot of variances when you're talking square feet, but when you have dollars to dollars, it's a lot easier to grasp that. So I guess that's my concern with this. Instead of square feet, it's dollars.
Yep, I understand that, Councilman. And I think there was some of that discussion early on, and then it seemed to be a much simpler and cleaner concept to look at a one-to-one swap concept. And I think that's ultimately how it ended up here. Steve, did you?
So just more of a comment, I guess, is it appears to me that if this land swap moves forward, and I'm kind of just responding a little bit on the value, they're going to have to put some substantial cost into new trail. I mean, there's more value over here to this existing parcel because it has existing trail, existing contour, existing trees. What I see is in this transfer, they're going to have to reinvest back into that to make up for what's going out. So there's going to be some substantial cost to redo all that sidewalk and stuff within that piece, and then again the extension of the 8-foot trail along the north. So I
think that's part of the question of how that's guaranteed within the agreement that we reach.
I would say that's part of construction cost, though, Steve.
Hi, Dr. Verbicki. Thank you for letting me visit with you just a bit, and thanks everybody for your consideration. One thing I just want to reassure everyone that being in this community since 1983 and taking care of lots of people and continuing to and growing our practice and recruiting new physicians and services, the best thing that we can do is create an environment for our patients and the public, for a welcoming place to come, and that includes how the property is maintained, and the vision that we have is to just extend what your previous people have done in the past to develop that beautiful park and to extend it around the corner down Brosh Avenue and to replace trees and add more trees, etc. I have a special interest in the environmental aspect and participate in state organizations to do so. And I know the value in healthcare of nature and being out in nature and contributing how the value of grounding to our human health. So the naturalistic approach to healthcare is going to continue to now finally evolve, increase in our society. And I pledge to you that we will make this a picture of beauty for the city and be able to provide services to our patients and the public here in Norfolk and in Northeast Nebraska. So I just wanted to thank you again for your consideration. Thank you.
Very well said, Doctor. If you would, I might have a question or two. Any questions from the council for Dr. Ripke? No.
I got one that's kind of maybe maybe not timed right, but as this building is, as the project progresses and you're eventually into this building, what do we do with the vacant buildings that you're in now?
We do not own the facility anymore. I was in that building with two other partners, and one, because of a death of one of the partners, he was a controlling partner. The building was sold to an entity in Lincoln, Nebraska. So we currently just lease the property we're currently in. So when we move out, it will be up to them to see what happens to it.
Thank you.
Doctor, thank you. One question I think we're going to get to sooner rather than later, so I'll just ask it now. So if this ordinance in front of us does not pass on all three readings, we don't have the discussion on the final plat tonight. It seems to me, hearing some of the discussion, that there might be interest in seeing a little more detailed final plat in reference to some of the beautification to be done on a swapped property and how that lays out specifically in reference to the trail as well. Would you be opposed if, should this pass on first reading tonight, that give us a little time to maybe consider that final plat for some of those specifics to be written in?
Well, I embrace the fact, and I was approached by people that were involved in the development of that and concerned about, are we going to destroy their park? And my comeback was, how could, that we would certainly not want to do that, but we wanted to enhance it. And I embraced the fact of forming a committee with the city to be along as partners in the development, so that there's approval of the plat, of the beautification along that area. So I wholly embrace that. And again, that's what we want to really be about, is a great partner with the city. I think we've shown that by staying in this community for many, many years. And now with a new generation of doctors coming, we are committed to be here and continue to serve the public. So I embrace any collaboration, cooperation, participation that the city and us can do. We want to be good partners. We're not in this just for, profit of any kind.
Well, and I get a strong sense from what you're saying that you're not looking just to replace, but also to enhance, as you said.
Amen.
And so I think, given the magnitude of the value of the property involved here, having a chance, and by no means do we want to delay this any further. We know it's been a discussion, but giving us a couple weeks in terms of looking into that final plat, making sure that we all understand what's taken, we'll put back in where and how. I think there's some value to that. And I'm welcome to any objections from the council on that plan if they have any, but that seems to me a path forward here that can help this get started moving along and also put some definition to that final plat that ultimately is going to have to be approved to get going anyway.
Yes, this is the gateway to the riverfront.
Josh, the only thing I'd have on that is, obviously, we're not to the plat yet, so it's a part of a different discussion other than this, but it's written in there that we would have, that it would be brought forward to us. If I'm thinking right, Danny, it's written that any changes or any modifications to that is already written in there. We're talking about specifics, but it's all got to come forward to us before anything can happen anyway, whether that's tree removal, tree replanting, any types of what that sidewalk looks like, whether it's straight or curved. So I don't know that, we're getting into the details, but it already says that it's kind of come in front of us.
That's true, Councilman,
anyway.
but we do have on item 26 approval of the final plat of the subdivision. So,
But again, the final plat says that we get full we get to review that before any changes are made. Am I thinking correctly?
That's what the agreement currently contemplates. And if you're talking about, Dr. Verbicki just referenced a committee of some sort, if we are talking about pre-approval of the landscaping plans, something like that, it sounds like maybe there's some contemplation that it would go before the Parks and Rec Board. I think their next meeting is, on the 20th of this month, something around there. So I don't know if that was something that was being discussed or suggested, but yeah, just like you said, Councilman, as part of just the land swap strictly, they're gonna have to bring that before, for consideration. However, the mayor's also right that there is that plat in place, but I think that would be part of like the land swap agreement. If we were doing anything different, that, if we were gonna add more detail, we would want that in here first, because how it is currently, it just talks about the city getting pre-approval of all landscaping plans.
In the plat, not in this consideration.
Yeah, that's just within the agreement, correct?
So, yeah, it's all, just to interject here with a couple items. So the plat is strictly a subdivision of land or creation of lots. I believe what I'm hearing is the conversation is around the site plan. It's a function of the building permit. So again, I don't think once the land swap's in place, you could move forward without your plat.
Right.
The plat is something that isn't going to impact his ability to move forward or not move forward. It's the building permit that's going to allow him to move forward with it and start construction. So this could easily go land swap, building permit, the plat. I'm not sure what's driving the need for the plat per se.
Well, Steve,
That could
the
come
plat is
later.
driving it because he would be putting half his building on city property and not his property without the plat. So the plat has to go through before he gets a building
So
permit.
so the
Yeah.
land swap agreement isn't doing that?
No.
Okay.
So you need the plat to actually physically deed property one way or the other. So that's what the plat is doing. And on some plats, particularly with existing trees, some surveyors actually put the existing trees on there. So if you wanted to add that to the plat so that you could see exactly which trees would be removed with that section of property, some surveyors do that if that would be helpful too.
I think that gets to some of Councilman Webb's concerns.
Yeah, so Josh, are you what you're saying is, when we get to 26, maybe table that?
Well, I bring it up now because if this is passed on just first reading tonight, we don't even get to 26 tonight. And that then effectively gives us some time to discuss things and potentially add more detail into the final plat, as Val suggested.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, any further discussion? Council? From public? Okay. Short title, please.
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska to authorize the transfer of city property, to provide the terms of transfer and authorize the mayor to execute and deliver a quitclaim deed to the property, to provide a remonstrance to said transfer as provided by law, to provide when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and to provide with the publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
Okay, please vote.
I'll be abstaining from this vote.
Okay, thank you, Councilman.
Voting in the affirmative, McCarthy, Granquist, Arns, Webb, Murin. Voting in opposition, Hildebrand, abstaining, Clausen. Ordinance number 5887 carries on first reading only, and it can only pass on first reading.
Okay. Given that, we will forego items. Table?
Yep.
Okay. Staff recommendation is, rather than removing or forgoing those items, 24, 25, 26, those be tabled at this point. So I will open up consideration on item 24, consideration of approval to acquire property located at 610 West Norfolk Avenue.
I will make a recommendation that items 24, 25, and 26 be tabled.
Second that.
We are doing them all at one time.
Let's do just, we'll do just one at a time, number 24.
Okay.
I know it'd be much easier.
No luck, Council. So do I hear a motion to table item 24?
I'll make a motion to table item number 24.
I would second that.
Okay. Motion and second to table. Please vote.
Voting in the affirmative, McCarthy, Granquist, Arns, Webb, Hildebrand, Murin, abstaining, Clausen. Motion to table item number 24 carries.
In item 25, I'd entertain a motion in consideration of approval of a land swap agreement with Midwest Health Partners Real Estate LLC, a Nebraska limited liability company for property located at and near 610 West Norfolk Avenue.
You could just move to table.
I'll make a motion to table item 25.
Second.
Motion and second to table. Please vote.
Voting in the affirmative, McCarthy, Granquist, Arns, Hildebrand, Murin, abstaining, Clausen. Motion to table item number 25 carries.
And item 26 would open for a motion of consideration of resolution 2024-26 approving the final plat of Midwest Health Partners subdivision.
I'll make a motion to table item 26.
Second.
Motion second to table. Please vote.
Voting in the affirmative, McCarthy, Granquist, Arns, Webb, Hildebrand, Murin, abstaining, Clausen. Motion to table item number 26 carries.
Okay, item 27, I will open the public hearing to amend section 6-52 of the official city code to adopt the 2023 National Electrical City Planner.
Thank you. This is somewhat of a housekeeping item because the state of Nebraska has adopted the electrical code from 2017 to the 2023. And so you'll see in the proposed ordinance that it is as adopted by the state with their amendments because they did leave just a couple of items from the 2017 code in there and in their adoption of 2023. So that is what we were proposing to do so that we can stay with the state.
Okay. Thank you, Val. This is a public hearing. If anyone wishes to comment, they can do so now.
Well, I guess I just have a question. If we adopt this tonight, any projects that are in place now and starting, does this apply to that?
No, if you're operating under the 2017 NEC that you've already have a building permit going, you're going to continue to operate under that.
Okay.
Anyone wishing to comment? Okay, hearing no one. Planning Commission report, please.
The Norfolk Planning Commission held a public hearing on May 21st, 2024 to consider an amendment to section 6-52 of the official city code to adopt the 2023 National Electrical Code. The Planning Commission recommends approval of the amendment with a 6-0 vote.
Okay, thank you. We'll close the hearing and move to item 28. Look for a motion to consider ordinance number 5885 approving an amendment to section 6-52 of the official city code to adopt the 2023 National Electrical Code.
I'll offer for consideration ordinance number 5885, approving amendment to section 6-52 of the official city code.
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion, council?
Actually, I do have one. question for Val. So does our, and maybe this is, I don't know how to phrase it for sure, but is our city restrictions any more stringent than this national code? And if so, do we follow the city code or do we follow the national code?
So, you would ask me about that. I don't think we do a lot of insertions, deletions, amendments as much in the electrical code as we do in like the building, that sort of thing. And so, if we do any of those, we can only be more restrictive, not less restrictive than what the state has approved. So if our city code is more restrictive, then that is what would follow.
So we follow the city code, not the national code?
If we've made any changes
Okay.
more stringent, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Along with the letters of interpretations or interpretations of how the code reads, that's what the electrical board is for, of local contractors, correct?
Yes, that's
weigh-
what the
to weigh
Board of
variances.
Appeals would be
Or
if
appeals.
you, yep.
Okay.
Any other discussion on this? Okay, hearing none. Short title, please.
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska to amend Section 6-52 of the official city code to adopt the 2023 National Electrical Code, to provide when this ordinance shall be in full force effect, and to provide for the publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
Please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Ordinance number 5885 carries on first reading.
Seeing no opposition, I'll make a motion that we suspend the rules and pass on second and third.
Second.
Motion and second to suspend the rules and approve on second and third readings. If no further discussion, please vote.
Waiting on two more. Suspend the rules and
suspend
pass
the
on
rules.
second and third. One more. Somebody hasn't voted. I can't tell who, but okay, thank you. All council members present voting in the affirmative. Ordinance number 5885 carries on second and third.
All right. Everybody stay with us here. Regular agenda, item 29. We'll look for a motion of consideration of approval of a professional services agreement with McClory Engineering for design of the pickleball courts and sidewalks at Libertyville Park in the amount of $7,500.
I'll make a motion for consideration of approval.
Motion second for some background on this. Nate Powell, our Parks and Recreation Director.
Mayor and council, thank you. This is an agreement with McClory Engineering. This project is part of a donation from Mike Wingate, Tom Sheath, and Brian Adams, who donated $300,000 to build pickleball courts at Liberty Bell Park. This agreement with the engineering firm in the amount of $7,500 for the design and bidding of the pickleball courts and ADA sidewalk access. That'll include access to the courts, the softball field, and a future restroom that we're going to be building as well. We do have funds budgeted for a sidewalk and for restrooms, and we'll be bringing a restroom contract here shortly in the next few weeks. I'll be getting that to you as soon as possible. We are also expanding the playground from what we put in about a year ago. The staff are going to be doing that once they're done with the Johnson Park playground, so we have a lot of projects on our plate right now, but we'll get to that. We would also like to install a shelter there as part of this project. But for now, this is the pickleball courts and the pickleball courts and the sidewalks. The staff recommends approval of the professional services agreement with McClory Engineering in the amount of $7,500 for pickleball courts and sidewalks at Liberty Bell Park. Any questions?
Thank you, Nate. How many courts is this again, Nate? 2?
4 courts.
4 courts.
Yes. We'll be having lights there as well.
I do have a question. You used the word shelter. What are you talking about?
A picnic shelter, we'd like to do like a picnic shelter there at some point.
Okay, and I know this isn't exactly what we're dealing with right now, but you mentioned you may be bringing a restroom
Yep.
plan
We have
forward.
we'll do a prefab restroom facility that I'm working through a contract right now for a Sourcewell contract for that.
One thing that was brought up, I believe it was last meeting, the change that was made to the locker rooms out at Tawazuka by adding a storm shelter. I don't know, again, I'm a little ahead of your game here, but is that something that you could also take a look at as when you have a restroom, maybe build in a storm shelter in that plan?
These would be 2 single restrooms, so it wouldn't be very large, but we could definitely look and see.
Well, what I'm
what's
asking is,
possible.
could you look into it?
Absolutely.
To do that,
Yep.
as opposed to just a restroom facility?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Yep. Other questions?
Okay, any other questions?
When do they plan on starting, Nate?
It'll be about 4 weeks in the design process, so we should have this out to bid next month.
Then when would they,
I'm sorry, what was that?
when would they start? Roughly like August, September?
The bidding process is about 30 days, so it'll be fall project, August,
Okay,
September.
that's what I was going, okay.
Nate, this is part of this $7,500 is part of the $350,000 donation.
It's part of the $300,000 donation, yes.
So this is not city funds?
No.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Nate. Any other comment on this or public input? Any other discussion, council?
I think it should be mentioned of how awesome a donation of like this comes forward.
Yeah.
And these people should be thanked for what they've done for our community.
Yeah, that park is transforming before our very eyes because of those donations. It's a big deal. Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
Item 30, would look for a motion to consider ordinance number 5886 to amend section 18-1 of the official city code to add North Fork Water Park and East Bluff Park to the list of parks defined in that section, and to amend sections 18-3 and 18-9 to address operating hours and water recreation activities in parks.
I'll make a motion for consideration of ordinance number 5886.
Second.
Motion second. Once again, Nate, for some background on this, please.
Thank you. So we have a few ordinance updates here for you regarding our new addition of the Whitewater Park at Johnson Park. This includes designating the Whitewater Park in our list of parks in our city code and identifying also East Bluff as a park as well. For East Bluff, we'll have our final takeout for the river there. That's our only city property in the area, and it's a good place to have a takeout. This property has been talked about being a park for some time now. Some improvements could be a restroom, a picnic shelter, and a playground. Those are all good things for the community, and having that with those new housing development there and the apartments in the area as well, it'd be good to have a park in that area. So I'll review the code just real quick, the changes that we have in the code here. Section 18.1, we would define North Fork Whitewater Park and East Bluff Park. For operating hours, for the Whitewater Park, it'd be sunrise to sunset, so we wouldn't want people on the water in the evening hours when it's dark. Section 18.9, this would change to allow swimming and wading may be allowed in designated areas where posted by signs during open hours of the park. We do have a beach at Johnson Park now, and you can get your feet in there and enjoy that a little bit. So that would be a good addition there. 18.9C, just identifying canoes, rafts, kayaks, tubes, surfboards, and boats with oars shall be permitted to operate in the North Fork Whitewater Park. Section 18.9D, any person engaging in recreation activities shall follow the safety rules and guidelines that are required by the state of Nebraska boating regulations. and also other guidelines that we have posted. And
I'll stop you there,
Go ahead.
Nate, just for a question. And those regulations include wearing a life jacket?
that is a requirement. That is
Requirement, but be a state law, yeah, right?
What's that?
By way of state law?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay. All right, thank you.
Section E, no fishing allowed in the Norfolk Whitewater Park, and I've given you a map that shows that area. We would sign it, so it'd only be in signed areas. At each feature, we would have a sign that says no fishing. And then glass bottles and containers are prohibited. In F, in G, it talks about the no unoccupied watercraft unless you're going to be taking your, going to pick up your car and coming right back. I mean, so that would be okay, but we don't want people storing them overnight. That also is identified in section H.
Nate, when you say overnight parking, can you just talk a little bit about too what the North Fork Whitewater Park will look like with parking and moving yourself from the North Fork? Or what does that look like?
So where is the parking located? So the put-in locations, the two main put-in locations would be on First Street. We do need to do some improvements there at the parking, but there is parking available there. There's parking available at Winter Park as well, and that's another put-in location. And then you get into Johnson Park. If you're just kind of hanging out in Johnson Park when that opens, there's a parking lot there as well. The takeout, we don't have parking right now, but by identifying East Bluff as a park, allows me to go after some grants to get some trailhead parking there. It's along our major trail, along the flood control, and also it's the end of the water trail from First Street to East Bluff. So that'll allow us to get some funds, hopefully, for trailhead improvements, and that would include parking and maybe a restroom.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Nate, the no fishing designations, there is fishing allowed in the North Fork itself, but there will be certain areas that will be marked for no
Yeah.
fishing because of conflicts potentially with
Just between
kayakers and tubers.
Yep, feature 1 to feature 7 in that area would be designated no fishing.
Okay.
There's a narrow path to get through for the kayakers and the tubers, and so we just can't have fishing lines crossing and hooks and stuff because you are falling out possibly, and just having fish hooks in there wouldn't be ideal.
Okay, thank you.
Nate, I have a question on that East Bluff Park. So maintenance-wise, right now, what are you doing in that area?
Right now, we're just doing the general mowing along the trail. That's what we currently do.
So if you designate this as a park, I'm assuming you're gonna have to spend a fair amount more resources to maintain this park? And then also, will you try to establish playground equipment, and has any of that been budgeted? Because I imagine they wouldn't want to park without any amenities to it.
Yep, so we would go after grant funds to make those improvements, and then the maintenance would come along with it. But in the meantime, we wouldn't have any additional maintenance of what we're currently doing. Not right now, not until we made improvements to the area. Because right now, it's mainly a detention pond.
How much space there is publicly owned, is owned by the
It's
city?
about 6 acres.
Yeah.
Councilman Arns, today it would be considered a nature park.
It's a nice way of saying it.
Nate, did you mention a timeline? We've had, I feel like, a lot of citizens from that part of the community reaching out of, they've been promised this and timeline on that East Bluff Park.
Yep, so right now, there's trail grants that are due in September. I'm gonna go after those for this site. And hopefully we can do something in the next year.
Thank you.
Just some background, that land, that's about 5 or 6 acres, if I recall correctly, that was donated to the city when the Norfolk subdivision was created.
Great.
And that's been the most vocal members as the Norfolk
Yeah.
citizens.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Nate. Any public input on this comment?
Nate, at the last Parks and Recreation Board, I asked you who is going to be responsible to enforce the sunrise to sunset hours. Brad Brooks, sorry about that.
Yeah, please.
Anytime we put hours on the signs, if there's a complaint that comes in, that allows law enforcement to enforce that. That's my understanding of enforcement with that, and that is on all of our signage out there.
Just seems like that's leaving a lot to be desired when you're dealing with kayaks and water.
Yep. We have hours in all of our parks, and if there is a complaint about some activity in the park, it's mainly complaint driven, so it's not like we're out there watching, but if someone in the public or a household has a lot of noise and they hear something and they want to call it in, they can do that.
And that typically has to be complaint driven, correct, Nate? Because there's almost virtually no way of having someone out there patrolling all our park spaces and making sure that
That's correct.
it's not being used right after sunset.
That's correct, and there's a lot of private property along the river too, so that's not enforceable, but that's a different issue.
Any other public comment on this? Okay. Short title, please.
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska to amend Section 18-1 of the official city code to add North Fork Whitewater Park and East Bluff Park to the list of parks defined in that section, to amend Sections 18-3 and 18-9 to address operating hours and water recreation activities in parks, to provide when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and to provide for the publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
Thank you. Please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance number 58A6 carries on first reading.
I'll make a motion to suspend the rules and pass ordinance 5886 on second and third.
Second.
Motion second to suspend the rules and approve on second and third readings. If no further discussion, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, ordinance number 5886 carries on second and third.
Okay, item 31, I would look for a motion to consider resolution 2024-27, authorizing submittal of the blight and substandard determination study for the 25th Street and Benjamin Avenue area study to the Planning Commission for review and recommendation.
I will offer for consideration resolution number 2024-27.
Second.
Motion and second, and for some background on this, I have Candace Alter, our economic developer, introducing, or are we going to go straight to developer? Okay, all right, Mr. Ray.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Jeff Ray with JEO Consulting Group. Also have Pete Becker here the developer.
Evening.
So before you, you have a draft blight study that we conducted for the 25th and Benjamin area. It's approximately 56 acres. It's surrounded by development on all four sides. It has been in the city for a substantial period of time. It was actually annexed back in 1991, and it has not developed since then. It's remained vacant. There's some drainage features in this area and some pretty obscure platting and very unuseful lots as far as proportions and the way that it had been platted over the history of that. We have talked with the other two property owners as well as Mr. Becker, and they are aware of this project. They are aware that they were included in the blight substandard and did not object to that. So they're basically, it's just pasture land for the majority of that area, and then there's obviously the doctor's office right there at 25th and Benjamin. There is a dilapidated home in the northern portion that's set very far back off, that's proposed to be redeveloped or developed at some point or torn down and then eventually rebuilt. And then on the south there was a home that had burned and it's gone. Foundation has been removed. The garage, or the accessory building to that, is still standing and is still there. It's still used for storage. And then Mr. Becker maintains ownership of that 13 acres on the far west that he would like to propose a development on, which is what is starting in its infancy stage here tonight before you. Obviously, needs to come before you, go to the Planning Commission, do the proper noticing. Planning Commission would give a recommendation, then come back before you for another public hearing to actually approve the blight substandard study. At that point, then Mr. Becker would be able to come before you with a full proposal of what he would like to do, and that if he needed tax increment financing to pursue that, to create additional residential in that area. As you're well aware from your last meeting and the report that Randy gave on your status at tax increment financing and blight substandard and where you are in the city, as well as your need for housing, this is the potential to create some additional housing typologies and some additional options for the citizens of Norfolk. So I will let Mr. Becker cover some of that portion of what he is proposing to do in that area.
Hello. That property has been zoned R3 for quite some time. I can't tell you how many years, but probably 20 years or so. And my idea would be serving the community the best by having it a condominium property where people have ownership versus apartments. And I think that would be a better use of the property than putting rental apartments on it. And the tax increment financing part of it would be probably the catalyst for the development of the condominium project. We would probably do it in phases, and this is very preliminary, probably 30 units to start with and see how that went and then proceed depending on market. Any questions?
Just for my clarification, I know the blight study area, which exact property are you talking about adding or potentially adding 30?
Right there where
Where the cursor is.
the cursor
Okay.
is. That's the only property that I own. I don't own any more of that.
Mr. Becker, so I know we're at the blight study stage here, but inevitably, this is about TIF, and so inevitably there will be questions about TIF. And as you know, these projects have to pass a but-for clause, meaning that development here would not be possible but for the incentive of TIF. And can you talk a little bit more about that? Why you were compelled in the first place to do a blight study? Why TIF would be needed and necessary to develop a project like this?
I've sat on my hands for quite a few years on this, and as time passed, I realized I didn't want to be in the rental business, and I think the TIF part of it comes into play to make this very much more affordable for people that would buy, and that's the reason for asking for the TIF.
And part of that is the TIF helping fund the public infrastructure around the project.
Exactly. I am not going to do this without TIF funding, plain and simple.
Okay. Thank you.
I asked for a little bit of grace on my question, but I wouldn't be doing my job as a councilman if I didn't ask what has been asked of me. With this property that you own and is under the blight study, is this so this can be sold to another developer and you being the current owner asking for the blight study so it'll be more marketable for the next developer instead of you developing it yourself?
That is not the intent. I can't tell you what the future holds. I'm past my expiration date, so I don't know how to answer that.
Fair. I just had, like I said, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't ask what has been asked of me.
We explained the process here too. I don't know if it was Val or Steve, but right now we're asking to have the ability to submit for a blight study, correct? We're not approving a blight study. We're not approving anything else besides the ability to submit for a blight study tonight, right? Correct?
Tonight is you forwarding the blight study to Planning Commission so that Planning Commission can have the first public hearing. And then once they have that public hearing, then it comes back to you guys with another public hearing before it's approved.
Okay, thank you.
So it's essentially the start before the start of the process, which is typically why these things are on consent agenda, usually. Any other questions?
I guess maybe a comment, maybe this is just time for our planning commission to let them do what they do best.
That is what they're here for.
That's right.
I would also kind of agree with that comment, that I think this would allow the public comment section to come into play on this by moving that forward to the Planning Commission.
Very good. Any other questions for Mr. Ray or Mr. Becker while they're here? Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it. Okay. Any other discussion or public comment here?
Jim McKenzie, I'll start the public comment period a little early. I guess what I'd really like to see would be more details on the condos and the affordability. Like I think I've mentioned before that I'm not opposed to TIF for truly affordable housing, but I'd like to see it before we approve blighting that property, because it doesn't make any sense to blight property if you're not going to TIF it. It doesn't make any sense to TIF it if you don't know what the affordability is. So you kind of need all those to come together. So I would really like to see the details of what's going to be developed there and how affordable those condominiums are going to be. So that would be, and the other question I would have would be, you know, what all else is in the TIF pipeline? How many millions of dollars of TIF are in the next 3, 6, and 12 months in the TIF pipeline? Because that affects, I believe, should affect your decision-making process, because how much can you afford to TIF? When you take away the revenue, the tax revenue that comes from those developments, and you get no new tax revenue, somebody else has to pay for it. So what is that pipeline? What does that look like? And how many dollars are we not receiving from those TIF projects? And how do we calculate that? How do we make intelligent decisions surrounding TIF? We don't have a policy, and we just it just keeps coming forward, and we have no policy on what we approve and what we don't approve. So it just seems appropriate to think about what's in that pipeline, what are those dollars, how does that affect us, and how do we make appropriate decisions on what you TIF and don't TIF? Thank you.
Right. Anyone else wishing to make public comment? I think it's fair to address some of those things, and I will note that just last council meeting, our city finance officer, Randy Gates, gave a detailed report on how TIF is used in Norfolk, how it's being used, how it has been used. And for reference, again, on that's on our city website, very easy to find, it's all detailed. And I don't, Candace, this might be a question for you. I think as part of that report, the study of TIF projects in Norfolk showed that for every $1 in TIF put into use, that $5 in private return or investment came from it. If you're prepared to talk about that a little bit, I think it's a fine venue to do that since it's been brought up.
Yeah, I could just a little bit. So we did look at 2018 through 2023, and those years when we looked at the average, we did see for every dollar of TIF that was issued by the city, we saw on average about $5 in private investment come from the private developers. I think also something to consider is a lot of times you don't see or hear about the secondary effects of tax increment financing. As you look at sales tax that's generated within the community, you look at all these new homes that are built, you're going to see furniture sales increase. You're going to see if outside contractors have to come in because contractors within the community can't accommodate all of the jobs. You're going to see hotel rooms filled up. You're going to see those workers eating out at restaurants, buying gas, and shopping within the community. So I think that there's a lot of secondary effects that we see from the use of tax increment financing and projects that are generated as a result. I think, you know, policies come up a couple times. We've been commended by Baird Home in the past, mainly due to the diligence that Randy Gates puts into all of these projects, that we do go above and beyond what state statute requires, and we follow very carefully Nebraska state statute as it relates to tax increment financing, how it can be used here in Norfolk. So I guess if there's a specific policy or another rule or regulation that this body would want to put on developers that are coming into the community and wanting to do business here, we could certainly take a look at that and offer it up for consideration. But we have a process that we walk developers through when they come to the community. We have a TIF application that we ask them to fill out. That was a new part of the process. We didn't have a process before. We did introduce that application. That lays out to staff and our subcommittee who we're working with, what their TIF attorney, or who their TIF attorney is, who their, any consultants that they're working with, what they want to use the tax increment financing for, and what those estimated costs are. And then we require cost benefit analysis. What would your cost be with TIF versus, or what would your return on investment be with TIF versus without TIF? So I think, you know, we do a very good job of moving people through the process. There's quite a few steps that it takes to move a project through TIF, including 2 public hearings at the blight study level, and then additional 2 public hearings at the redevelopment plan level. And so if an area is declared blight and substandard, then a developer can submit an application for the use of tax increment financing. If the subcommittee takes a look at it and says, you know, we think that we understand where you're coming from, we've looked at your application, we've looked at your return on investment, and invite them to create a redevelopment plan. That's when all of the details that Mr. McKenzie's asking for come out into the public. And that redevelopment plan is a very detailed breakdown of what that project's going to look like. And so there is a process that does come out within those public hearings. It is talked about in detail. Some of these projects haven't gotten up to that point because they've decided to not move forward. So all of that is up for public discussion during the very intensive public process that's associated with all tax increment financing projects. So that's probably a little more than what you were asking for.
No,
but
that's fine. I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but I don't think it can hurt to talk about how this process actually works and how it's been put in place. This is not by any means haphazard. It's a 6 to 8 month process, sometimes at its quickest. Like you said, requiring 2 public hearings at the blight study and process or stage, and 2 public hearings during the TIF application, redevelopment proposal. And again, I encourage anyone and everyone interested in how TIF works to look at the report that was provided at last council meeting. There's a lot of information there.
I think it's worth mentioning too that there's a cost to going through this process. The attorney fees that are required to make sure that these developers are following state statute, there's a cost for this blight study. So I do appreciate you allowing it to move through the process and going to Planning Commission because there was a cost to the developer for this study in particular. And if he receives that designation for this particular area, then he'll move on to the next cost, which is his redevelopment plan. And that's another, it can be up to $10,000. So, I mean,
People aren't doing this on a whim. They don't wake up in the middle of the night and say, hey, I think maybe I should get some TIF from the city of Norfolk. Right?
And it costs money to ask these questions. So I guess from my standpoint, I appreciate developers that want to come here and do business, and I appreciate the time you guys take to listen to them and consider their projects.
Not to belabor the point like I already have, but in housing, which is what we're talking about here, also part of that report detailed how housing growth has changed in Norfolk since a willingness to adopt TIF for housing. Can you talk about that in terms of numbers and units comparisons? I remember prior to 2016, we were seeing less than 50 housing units easily
Can I
per year.
interrupt for just a little bit? There's many other times where we're asked to get right back on topic for a resolution that's in front of us, and honestly, that's where I'm at right now. I don't think we need to we can talk about this when a blight and some standards back in front of us. We can talk about it when it's in front of us, but right now it's consideration resolution 2024-27. That's what's in front of us.
And that's fine, that's fine. But we had questions about TIF and how it's used in Norfolk, and I continue to hear the same questions over and over. So I figure maybe having the information out there over and over helps address some of those questions. So we will have time, to the councilman's point, we will have time to discuss further how housing trends have changed in Norfolk since adoption of TIF policies. Any other questions or comments? Any other public comment? If not, please vote.
Voting in the affirmative, McCarthy, Granquist, Arns, Hildebrand, Clausen, Murin. Voting in opposition, Webb. Resolution 2024-27 is adopted.
Item 32 would look for a motion to consider approval of a testing services contract with Certified Testing Services Incorporated for concrete repair 2024 project for an amount not to exceed $15,000.
I'll offer for consideration the approval of a testing service contract with Certified Testing Services.
Second.
Motion and second. For some background on this, Steve Ramus, our Public Works Director, please.
Mayor and council, this would be the testing services contract for our, the $1.9 million roughly in concrete repair improvements that we had awarded about a month ago. We tend to bring these testing contracts to the table post awarding the bids. And so this would be for concrete fresh tests, concrete strength tests for that project.
Thank you, Steve. Any questions?
Is this any subgrade testing?
If we feel we need subgrade testing, they do that
It
for
would be
us.
included in this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And then this is all ACSI tested?
This is all ACSI testing.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any further questions? Or public input on this? Okay, hearing none, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
Okay, that concludes this meeting of the Norfolk City Council. We are adjourned.